Everybody can hear me okay? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Awesome. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead quick and do our roll call, which, and again, in a normal class, I'd just be able to see you. I'd look around. You'd all have taken your seats in probably the exact same spots where you had decided to sit on the first or second day, and I'd know exactly who was all there. So let's just do this real quick. Lauren.
Here.
Connor.
Here.
Awesome. Again, you may say something completely ridiculous while I call your name, right? You don't have to just say here. Jake.
Here.
Okay. AJ.
Here.
Awesome. Joe.
Here.
Next Joe. So you don't know. It's like I got a bunch of Joes and a bunch of Sams. Okay, Claire. Diamond.
Here.
Awesome. Bryce. Okay, Patrick. Patrick, are you here yet? Are you unmuted? Okay. All right. We'll come back. Kyle.
Here.
Awesome. Lexi.
Here.
Sweet. Sam Hoffman.
Here.
Cool. Max.
Yeah.
Nice. Chloe.
Here.
Clay.
Here.
Tiana.
Here.
Woo. Sam Martinez.
Here.
Awesome. Annika.
Here.
Gerardo. Gerardo, are you here? Are you muted?
Here.
Okay, cool. Lindsay.
Here.
Sweet. Sam Schmitz.
I'm here.
Awesome. Mason.
Here.
Katie.
Here.
Cool. Nick.
Here.
Nice. Evan.
Here.
Sweet. Dave.
Yep. Here.
And back to Patrick. Maybe not here. Okay. All right. So we're all hanging in there. And let's see. So this is week 3, folks, which means we've got, after today, we've only got 4 weeks left. Can you handle that? Right? I imagine the answer is yes. All right. So did anybody bring their pet into their zone with them? Anybody wish to show us their pet? Their most beloved animal? Anybody? You gotta unmute yourself. Nobody wants to introduce us. My coworker Gary is normally he's over on that bed, but Gary decided to abandon ship right before class. So sadly, no Gary for our call, regrettably. Oh well, c'est la vie, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? I want to do a quick review of chapter 12. So if you've got your lecture outline handy, either up on a screen or print it out, whatever works best for you, let's go ahead and work our way through that, okay? Yeah? Okay. So basically, I want to highlight some things. I want to emphasize again how important it is that you watch/listen to the narrated PowerPoint. Not everything that matters is on this lecture outline or on the slides, okay? So you need to listen to it so that you can hear the other examples and, more importantly, clarification of some pretty important things, all right? And that's going to be true for all of the chapters. So I know that you got a lot of stuff going on in your lives. I get that. I'm there with you. But again, listening to those takes less time than the time we would have spent in another section of class, another session of class, all right? So you just got to make that time, make that happen. So chapter 12 talks about leadership. And can you imagine a more relevant topic given the world in which we are currently living, right? Pretty crazy. I want to jump to the second page of the lecture outline. That's where I want to go first. And basically give you this overview, this sense of what's going on when we talk about leadership and how it's been studied. And acknowledging that things that historically were most interesting at a given point in time, in reality, still continue to be interesting. For example, the trait approach, where we try to say, okay, what are the characteristics that good leaders have? And some of you, in your response to the discussion question, talked about traits that people had, right? Whether they were humble or whether they were decisive, etc. Whether they were focused on others. Okay, so those are all traits. And a lot of that research stalled in the latter part of the 1940s because of the key discovery that, in fact, the traits that we often associate with leaders are also associated with followers. In other words, being decisive by itself, just as an example, doesn't in fact help us to know whether someone is a leader or a follower. Followers can also be very decisive. Followers can also be very effective at coming up with vision. Followers can also be humble. I can keep going down the list, but there's no need to. The reality is that if you were to do the Venn diagram of leader traits and follower traits, they would almost perfectly overlap, okay? So that's what sent people looking for something else to try and understand leadership, which is the leader behavior stuff, which is on the bottom of page 2. So if we're not just trying to figure out who's a leader by virtue of their characteristics, maybe it's what they actually do that matters. And again, in your discussion responses, lots of you talked about what people do, the behaviors that they're exhibiting, whether those behaviors are more task-oriented, right? We got to get this job done. We have to add structure to our lives. We need to clean the house, whatever it is, whatever the task is, that's one set of behaviors. And another set of behaviors has to do with how do we build and maintain relationships with other people. So reaching out to people, listening to people, being supportive to people, those are all relations-oriented behaviors. And what the research discovered ultimately is that both sets of behaviors are important. They both matter. And I asked you to watch that clip from The Incredibles to see how that might play out, frankly, and from a movie that I love, that I hope you all do, to see that leadership in a given moment, what really matters might be focused on the task. In a different moment, it could be focused on the relationship, but both things have to happen. Now, here's the hang up. Most of us have a preference for one or the other. We're either really good at getting stuff done, the task, or we're really good at building and maintaining relationships. And we tend to not be as good at the other. Well, if the world needs us as leaders to do both, that means we have to consciously step out of our comfort zone to make sure that we are doing both. How can you know if you're more task or relations oriented? Well, here's the litmus test I suggest for you, okay? Imagine that you are busy working on a project that has a very tight timeline. The deadline is approaching. It's an important project. You have to get it done on time. The consequences of not getting it done on time are significant for you, negative. So you have to get it done. You also know that you will need pretty much every minute of the time between now and that deadline to get it done. Imagine that it's due like at 11:59 p.m. tonight, and you need all the time between now and then. Judging your own ability to get things done, that's what you decide. So you're working away on this project. You're doing what you need to do, and your phone rings. Now, if you're anything like me, you have your phone pretty handy, right? Like mine is right here. And you look at your phone, most of us do anyway, when it rings, to see, well, who's calling. I suspect that most of you don't just automatically take the call, right? You look to see who it is. I mean, and then you make a decision. Am I going to answer it or am I going to let it go to voicemail? Now, again, this project, it's on the table or the desk in front of you. You need all the time. The person on the phone is your mom or your dad or your significant other. It's somebody who really matters to you. Okay, somebody you care a lot about. That person, whenever you talk to that person, it's never a quick phone call. It's never like a 1 minute, hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's great. Okay, I'll talk to you later. It's never one of those calls. It's always at least 30 minutes. So what do? Do you just let the call go to voicemail or do you pick it up? What I want you to do right now is in the chat, I want you to indicate for you, do you pick it up? Do you take that call knowing that it's going to take you off that project for at least 30 minutes? Or do you just let the call go to voicemail? Put in what you would personally do. Don't worry about what anybody else says. Oh, this is great. Now, just take a look at what everybody has put in. Let's get a sense of this, right? So we've got pick it up, voicemail, 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 voicemail. Look at you folks. Pick it up, voicemail, lots of voicemail. Some pick it up, pick it up. Okay, now go ahead and, tell me why. Why would you either pick it up or let it go to voicemail? Just write a brief response in the chat. Why would you do what you would do? You can think about it. Think about it and then type why you would do what you would do. These are great. This is great. Got just about everybody. Okay. So if we were in class together, we would do the same exercise. I would lay out the exact same scenario. I would ask you to tell me why you would choose to do what you would choose. It's not the case that one or the other is better or right. Okay, so I want to make that point. It's not the case that one or the other is better or right. But it's important for you to recognize that if you said you would let it go to voicemail, for whatever reason, you're probably more task-oriented than relations-oriented. Are you with me? And that is, in fact, most common for college students. It is. It's because you're able to focus on tasks that you've been successful in your academic life. You can buckle down, even now when life is crazy and it's really difficult to find structure, right? And we all struggle with this. Some of us are better at it than others, but getting tasks done is part of what makes a lot of you tick. Those of you who said you'd pick it up, even knowing that you're under this pressure, well, that's a pretty clear sign that you're more people-oriented or relations-oriented. And again, let me reiterate, it is not the case that one is better or right. That's not the deal at all. But as a future leader, as a leader right now, be aware of who you are and understand that you're going to have to also do the other. Now, let me give you a real life example. I tend to be more task oriented. Okay, I love to get stuff done. When I talk in chapter 5 about motivation, I'm going to give you some more insight into why some of you might be more task or relations oriented. So we'll get to that later. But let's just go with the reality is I really like to get stuff done. At the end of the day, for me, knowing if I've had a good day comes down to, did I get done all the stuff that I wanted to get done? How many of you feel the same way? Hands up if you do. Yeah, right? Okay. So I tend to be very task oriented. Years ago, I had a woman working for me who helped me to understand in a very personal way how I needed to also keep track of relationships with people. So I would come into work, let's say Monday morning, every Monday morning, and I would go to my office, right? And I would get my stuff, I'd get on my computer, and I would just start working. This is because I had stuff to do. Everybody with me? I had stuff to do, so I'm gonna get to work. Anyway, I'm having the 6-month review with this woman who worked for me, and she shared with me that she felt as though I didn't like her, which was fascinating to me. I had never said anything that would suggest that, not that I knew of, and I liked her just fine. I had no idea where this was coming from. So I asked her to help me to understand why she felt this way, why she felt that I didn't care about her, why I didn't like her. And here's what it was. My behavior of coming into the office and just going right to work and focusing on my tasks, she took that as an indication that I wasn't interested in having a relationship with her as an employee, that I didn't care. Are you with me? So I learned from that even though my instinct, my natural way of being is just to get right to work, like to start a meeting, let's just get right into it. I learned, no, I needed to take time, get into the office, stop, ask her, how was your weekend? How is life? How are you doing? So you would have noticed, for example, in the one-on-one meetings that I had with each of you, that I didn't just start with, okay, let's look at your topic infographic. That would be very task-oriented behavior. Instead, how's it going? How's your life? How are your classes? And then, okay, now let's talk about the topic infographic. So still getting the task done, but not neglecting the relationship. That's what a good leader does. You have to do both, even though you'll be inclined to prefer one over the other. Everybody tracking, hopefully? Okay, awesome. So the next point that I want to emphasize is on page 3. And basically, the overall what I want to emphasize, when we shift from talking about traits to talking about behaviors to talking about contingency approaches, we are recognizing that how people will view you as a leader will not just depend on who you are, that's the trait stuff, or what you do. It's also going to depend on who they are and the situation in which you find yourself. I want to use a historical political example to illustrate this, okay? So before 9/11, and let's see, for all of you, you would have been pretty young, right? 9/11 happened. Some of you might have just been born. That's how long ago it is, right? Okay. prior to 9/11, all the way through September 10th, the perception of the president at the time, George Bush, wasn't very positive at all. In fact, if you were to go back and look at the newspapers over the summer preceding 9/11, what you would observe is that people thought he was a pretty crappy leader. They were not very impressed with him. They talked a lot about how much time he had spent on vacation as president, how many days away. And it was accurate. It was accurate. This has got nothing to do, by the way, with Republican or Democrat. The criticisms were coming from all angles, just to be very clear about this, okay? He wasn't living up to what people who had voted for him had hoped, and he was demonstrating some negative behaviors that the people who hadn't voted for him had said, yeah, that's the way he'll be. So I just want us to all be clear. This is not about Republican or Democrat. Irrelevant. Not the point here. People were dissatisfied with his performance. If you had asked people on September 10th to evaluate George W. Bush as a leader, the consensus would have been, the strong consensus would have been that he was ineffective, that he wasn't a very good president. Everybody with me so far? Okay? So that was the reality. 9/11 happens. And he very smartly does some things to help the American people respond to what was shocking, something that introduced an extraordinary amount of uncertainty into people's lives. I'll tell you where I was on 9/11. I was in my PhD program. I was sitting in a class when it happened, when the planes flew into the World Trade Center buildings, and came out of a break in class to discover what had happened. And it was chaos. I was at UW Milwaukee. I went into the Union. They had the big screens up, and the thing that the headline, not the headline, but whatever you want to call it, the running line on the bottom was that on any given day, over 50,000 people worked in the World Trade Center buildings. And so there was the potential, no one knew at that time, no one had any idea, there was the potential that more than 50,000 people had been killed in a 2-hour time frame. That's similar to the total number of Americans killed in Vietnam, in the Vietnam conflict. That's how many people we were talking about at this point. This was just, and no one knew what had actually happened. Is everybody with me? So no one knew. And George W. Bush came on talking to the American people, talked calmly, talked decisively. If we were to draw from path goal theory and situational leadership, we would say he was directive, telling people what we would do. And in that, almost literally in that instant, in that 24-hour time frame, people's perceptions of George W. Bush as a leader changed. It was a 180 in terms of what people thought of him on September 10th, what people thought of him by September 12th. Everybody with me? Now, had George W. Bush changed in terms of his traits? No. No. Had he changed in terms of his behaviors? A little bit. But what really mattered at that point was what the followers were looking for. What we were looking for and the situation in which we found ourselves. And his style matched what we needed in that moment. Is everybody with me? So our perception of him changed, and he was perceived then as an effective leader. Now, why am I spending so much time talking about this? Because I want to forewarn you. No matter how great of a human being you are, no matter how much you care about other people, no matter how hard you work for other people, it is still possible that they will perceive you to be an ineffective leader. That's the reality. Because your style might not be the style that they need in that moment. the context might be one where what you can provide isn't what's needed in order to move people forward. Is everybody with me? So being a good leader it's not as simple as being a good person. It's also what do your followers need, and what does the situation call for? Okay, so that's the setup for the contingency school. And people who don't understand that struggle as leaders, because inevitably, your followers will change in terms of what they need and want from you. Let me give you another example from my research. Coincidentally, in 2011, in Joplin, Missouri, there was an EF5 tornado that destroyed 1/3 of that town, killing the highest number of people killed in the United States in a tornado since the early 1940s. It was devastating. Within 24 hours of that natural disaster, the town's city manager, his name is Mark Rohr, was speaking to the people of that town in decisive, directive terms. We will rebuild. This is what we're going to do. We will start with X. We will then do Y. Is everybody with me? And people responded positively. And the town, Joplin, which has just over 50,000 people, to give you a sense of this, but that's not the number that matters the most. There are just over 50,000 people who live in this place, but it is in fact the regional economic hub for 3 states, okay? So people, on any given day, approximately 250,000 people are in fact interacting with Joplin's economy. So he was very decisive. He was autocratic in his decision-making, where he just made decisions, okay? And people responded. And the community started on a recovery trajectory that is typically unheard of. With a major disaster like that, usually you're looking at 10, 15 years before the community can recover. I'm not exaggerating. That's the reality. But Joplin was able to move swiftly because of the kind of leadership that Mark Rohr demonstrated. Now, interestingly, a few years later, Mark Rohr was fired. The city council shit-canned him. And do you want to know why? Mostly because he was himself, meaning he had continued to display the same leadership style, this autocratic, decisive, directing leadership style, and reality had changed around him, where the followers no longer needed someone to just tell them what to do. They wanted to participate in decision-making. They had their own ideas about how the town should recover, and they wanted those ideas listened to and acted upon, and he wasn't able to make that shift. And as a result, he went from being seen as sort of, I would use the word savior, because that's how many people perceived him because of his leadership style, and continuing to exhibit the exact same leadership style a few years later. Now he's demonized and they fire him. Same exact style. But the situation changed around him, as did the needs of the followers. Those are 2 really important stories that reflect the reality. Again, for you to keep in mind, you can't just decide my style is X and stick with it, because it will inevitably prove ineffective. Okay, I want to take you to page 4 then and talk a little bit about path goal approach. Again, I want to highlight for you again this idea that different kinds of people and different situations require different leadership styles. And I want very specifically to illustrate the difference between 2 of these. So directive and supportive, those are easy, right? I mean, this is not hard. But I need to differentiate for you participative from achievement oriented. A participative style could be likened to a democratic style, where I ask all of you for input. You're involved in making whatever decision needs to be made. Certain kinds of people really like that. I would illustrate this by talking about students. If I'm teaching a freshman level class, I cannot use a participative style, meaning, for example, I could not walk into that class and say to those freshmen, okay, you all are going to help me write the syllabus. Can you imagine when you first started school? Most of the students would have a complete freak out. It would just be like, what? No, you're the teacher. You're supposed to tell us what to do, right? Well, if in contrast, I talk about seniors, my seniors, when I teach the capstone course in business, for example, there I operate very differently. This class, the one that you're in right now, I give you lots of structure. I've got some freshmen, I've got sophomores, I've got a range of people, but it's mostly toward the earlier end of the scale, okay? In the capstone course, it's all seniors, all graduating seniors. And by then I can say to folks, okay, here are the options for what you might do to get your grade. You choose, you decide, it's up to you. And that's what they want. And they're ready to dive in. They're basically ready to help write that syllabus because they now want to participate. That's a participative style where the leader engages the followers in making decisions, not just little decisions, but important decisions as well. And you can do it when people, your followers, have lots of ability, when they care about the decision, and if they've got a high internal locus of control, right? Where they like to be in control of what happens in their life. They don't believe in luck. They believe in hard work. Those folks want to participate. So that's participative. Achievement-oriented is when, as a leader, this is not about involving people in decision-making. This is, I set really high goals for you. So for example, I say to you all, you know, I know we're all self-isolating. I know you got a lot going on, but I feel like you could do more in this class than any other class I've had that met face-to-face. So what I'm expecting is that 90% of you are going to get an A, and I'm not handing those out. You're going to get them through hard work, and I know you can do it. You see the difference between the two? Achievement-oriented is saying, we're going to go for the Olympic gold, people. I'm the leader. I'm the one who decided that. I didn't ask you all what you want. I didn't say, do you all want to go for the Olympic gold? I just told you we're going for the Olympic gold. That's the difference. Participative, I'm asking you what you think, and we are deciding together. Achievement-oriented, I'm setting this really tough goal for you, and I'm setting it. It's me as the leader doing it, not asking y'all what you think. That makes sense? Okay. Sometimes people will mix these up because I'll say to you, for example, imagine the person who believes in hard work, who believes that they decide their fate, who believes that the good things that happen to them are the result of what they themselves have done, along with working with others. Which style does that person prefer? Participative or achievement-oriented? And people will guess achievement-oriented. No, that's absolutely wrong. The person who believes that they themselves exert mastery over the world around them, that's an internal locus of control. They want to be involved in making the decision. They might collectively decide that they want to go after some big goal. Are you with me? But the thing that's key is who got to make the decision. If it's the followers themselves, if that's what they want, then they want a participative style. If they still would rather have the leader make that call, then they want an achievement-oriented style. I hope that clarifies those two. Yes? Okay, awesome. The fifth thing that I want to emphasize is, again, the bottom line associated with this contingency approach. Very quickly, no matter who you are or what you do as a leader, don't forget the followers. Don't forget the followers. Okay, sixth. This is on the next page, page 5 of your lecture outline. I just very quickly, and by the way, if you're wondering how many of these am I going to do, I have 8 main points. So we're on number 6. Transformational leadership is on top of transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is, you're my employee, I'm your boss. You do what I ask you to do, I give you a paycheck. Woo. Okay. That's what it's a transaction. That's the kind of boss that many of you have had. Transformational leadership is what we display when what we're trying to do is to develop our employees. We're trying to make them better than they've been because that's what they want. Those employees want this. So we're interested in their development. Okay? When we're interested in people's development, we have to do these things that are listed for transformational leadership, right? Where we've got to try and influence people through them being able to see that we walk the talk. That when we say something matters, we follow through with action. We don't just say things, right? Anybody can say stuff. Anybody can say stuff, but we actually do. We have to be inspirational, which means we need to understand what our followers care about. We have to be people driven. We have to actually care. You can't pretend to care. I can't emphasize this enough. People are smart and they can spot a phony from a mile away. They know when someone is being insincere. When someone says, I care about you, and they're thinking to themselves, no, you don't. You so totally don't. Right? So you have to sincerely care about people and you have to challenge them. So let's talk about this while we're all quarantining. Some of you talked about professors as leaders and what they've done and how you perceive that to demonstrate leadership, which I thought was fantastic, right? Faculty have had lots of debate over the last several weeks about how to run these classes. You know, we had a week to figure out how we were going to transition from teaching face-to-face to alternative delivery methods. I love that phrase, right? We had to decide, each of us, what platform were we going to use? Were we going to do everything asynchronously? For example, just all narrated PowerPoints or all handouts with no live stuff. Or we're going to mix it up somehow. We also had to think about things like, how are we going to do exams? How much do we want to require in terms of assignments? How are we going to make sure that the students are getting out of this experience at least what we hope they'll learn? Is everybody tracking with me so far? So we had a lot of decisions to make in an extremely short time frame. Normally, and I've mentioned this to some of you, normally when a professor is asked to put a course online, we've got at least a couple of months to figure out how to do that. And you try to have the entire course set so that on day one, everything is ready to go? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, with a week to prepare, hardly any of us have everything ready to go for the whole time. I have put in so many hours over the last few weeks, as have you. I'm acknowledging this. As I've mentioned, things like doing a narrated PowerPoint, and it's not a once and done. I mean, it's usually I end up redoing things. It takes forever to load it up. Et cetera. Everything takes more time. So here's the thing that we all had to think about as faculty members. Do we just decide to lower our standards? In other words, what we might normally require, do we just drop those into the toilet? Say to ourselves, well, we're all having a hard time right now. Or something else. And I think in some cases, people have decided we're not gonna require much from the students. And in other cases, some people have decided to require more. I know that some of you have experienced this, right? And I think what most of us are trying to do is to find the sweet spot. Now, I'm not talking to you randomly here at this point. I'm getting at the point about challenging people. I will tell you my perspective on this, and I know that my perspective is shared by many other faculty members. And it has to do with this model, this transformational leadership model. And I'm going to be really candid and blunt, okay? And it will have been recorded. So everyone, it will be there for anybody who would want to listen to it. But here goes. Are you ready? Especially given my expertise in disasters, I know that the worst thing for me to do is to just say, we're just going to do nothing. Because that will leave you feeling more anxiety, quite frankly, than if I say, you know what? I'm going to teach this class so that by the time we're done, you're going to learn what you should learn in this class, even though I'll have had to modify some of how I do things and some of what I require in terms of assignments. But this stuff matters, period. And this is when you're taking the class. And yes, it sucks that we're not in person. It sucks for me as much as it sucks for you. I promise you that. It's not the same. It's not ideal. It's not what any of us would wish for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? We got to get up every day. I have made it a point to shower every day and get dressed. I'm wearing nice clothes today. I'm wearing nice shoes today. I put my makeup on. I did that all for you, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And I'm going to make sure that by the time you finish this class, you know more about what makes people tick than you did before we started. Because it's going to serve you well for the rest of your life. End of story. Now, that's the transformative. I am challenging you to figure out how to do things even without me with you in person all the time. And likewise, I'm being challenged. So the topic infographic review meetings. Normally, we sit in my office. It's lovely. You open your laptop, I look at it with you, it's great. Well, we've had to make an adjustment, right? And here's something I want you to understand and know. Reviewing those with you on Monday, yesterday, some still today, those are some of the best infographics I've seen. The discussion questions the last 2 weeks. I hope you've had a chance, besides reading your own, besides, you wrote your own, and then you had to respond to one, right? But you could respond to more if you wanted. But more importantly, I hope you've had a chance to read, even skim what your colleagues are writing. It's exceptionally good stuff. So rather than just say, oh, we're just going to completely back off, I and other faculty members have said, nah, I know that you can do what needs to be done in this difficult time. Here's the challenge. And you have met the challenge. Again, reread, go ahead and read those discussion responses. Don't worry, don't get uptight about grammar and stuff. People are typing online. Things don't always come across exactly as we might prefer if we were writing very formally and so on. Think about, imagine a class in which I had asked you all to identify a leader in this crisis and how you would have responded. Most of you might not have even volunteered a response. But here you are doing it, and you're coming up with amazing responses. So a transformational leader doesn't allow a crisis to throw them off the overall goal, which is to help people develop. Every single really good teacher you've ever had tries to be a transformational leader. Are you with me? That's the best example I can give you. We're trying to understand who is a transformational leader. Think about the best teachers you've ever had, right there. And it was never, they're never considered the best, I would wager this, because they let you have it easy. Am I right? They challenged you. And you discovered, wow, you could do things you didn't even realize you could. That's what it means to be a transformational leader. Very similar to that is the charismatic leader. One thing, though, that's important, an important difference, is that charismatic leaders aren't necessarily focused on developing their people. Oh, they want stuff to happen. Big stuff, preferably. And they'll be supportive, but they're not necessarily trying to develop that other person. Are you with me? That's not the goal. The goal is to achieve the end, not to help the other person change, transform, become even better. It's not about developing followers, okay? Charismatic leaders, in fact, usually emerge in crisis. So a lot of the people that you're writing about in your discussion question, I mean, I very deliberately asked that question the way I did. This is when we would expect those charismatic people to really shine. They're the ones who, during a crisis, help us all to feel as though life will once again be okay. I can tell you that as hard as this is right now, and how as unprecedented as this isn't the first time in history that people have had to deal with crisis. It won't be the last. It won't be the last time in your life that you have to deal with crisis. How people respond in crisis tells us everything about them. Some people will rise up. Other people will allow the crisis to defeat them. But the potential is always there to rise up. And a charismatic leader is the person who, during that crisis, helps others to rise up because of some end that they're trying to accomplish. Okay? You don't need to be a great speaker to be a charismatic leader. That's not what it's about. It's not about being a great orator. I mean, it's nice if you are. It's awesome. Okay? But that's not the key. I'm sure you've had teachers who were charismatic, for example, who maybe weren't the most compelling teacher. I'll tell you about one of mine. There's a guy I had as an undergraduate teaching a genetics course that I took to fulfill one of my, what we call core requirements here at St. Norbert College, right? I get into the class, and I was a business and Spanish major. I was double majoring in those two. And I realized I am the only person in the room who is not a science major. Panic. You say panic? Okay. Because now I'm thinking, holy crap, what have I gotten myself into? But I'm like, I'm just going to stick with this. The guy teaching the class was very soft spoken. You know, I tend to be sort of like, whoo, right? In the classroom, that's who I am. I'm like, hi. I walk all over the place. I'm talking to people. This guy was very quiet. He was very quiet. He was mesmerizing almost. But The secret to his success was how much he cared about his topic. And that came through. So I would never have described him as like the world's greatest public speaker. But you knew when you talked to him that he deeply cared. That makes sense? Okay. That's charisma. 8, the last thing I want to talk about, all the way to the end. All the way to the end. The video that I asked you to watch, or that you should have watched as part of the narrated PowerPoint, that shows the guy on the hillside. If you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. And that video pulls together everything we talk about with leadership, which is there's no such thing as being a leader without followers. And while we have this tendency in our society to talk all the time about leaders, we do. We give them awards, right? We have leadership awards and so on. In reality, without followers, there are no leaders. If you could be the smartest, greatest, most interesting person in the world, but unless people want to follow you, you got nothing. And the other point that the video makes is that when you are a leader and someone does decide to follow you, you need to make sure that that person knows how much you appreciate them. Because ultimately, it will be that first follower, those key followers, if you will, that the other followers will follow. More so than you as the leader. Because they're not going to see you as much. They're going to see their coworkers, their teammates, the other people. So you need to show those people some love. That's the bottom line. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about chapter 12? Anything that's not clear? If you do, this is your chance to throw it into the chat or even unmute yourself and ask it. Either is cool. Wow, I am the most clear lecturer on the planet. This is amazing. It's cool. I want you to know that if you do have questions, I want to remind you again, you know how to get a hold of me. We can do a Google Hangout, just you and me. We can do emails. I actually prefer the Google Hangout, and I'll tell you why. I am the world's slowest typist, okay? So I can do a quick phone call with you a lot faster than I can respond in an email. So don't hesitate. All right. So let's talk about that discussion. First of all, let's take a stretch, shall we? Let's pause. Let's take 2 minutes. You could check your phone, see if there are any emergency texts that you must respond to. You could stand up. I'm sitting on a yoga ball, so I'm doing okay in terms of sitting, but you might be sitting on a really uncomfortable chair. Go ahead, feel free, get up and stretch for 2 minutes, and I'll start talking again in 2, okay? You got time. You got time. I should be singing or something, right? Something that would be entertaining. No, I would not do that to you. That would be torturous. But if you didn't get a chance to watch the Hamilton, the video with that I shared with you, the link that I shared from YouTube, is totally worth it. I don't know if you're a Hamilton fan at all. You don't have to be in order to enjoy this. Lin-Manuel Miranda is this brilliant performer who wrote the musical Hamilton and successfully starred in it for a very long Broadway run. They're going to be making a movie of it with the original Broadway cast that'll come out. It's supposed to come out next year, toward the end of next year. And it's rap. It's amazing. So if you haven't had a chance, it's like a 6-minute video. It's totally worth your time. So enjoy it and get a little history lesson while also enjoying some fantastic artistry. Okay. Are we back? Did everybody get a good stretch in? Did we check our social media? Is the world still spinning outside of our houses? Yes. Yes. Who cares, right? Okay. Okay, let's dive back in. So, and I would say if I were to make a prediction right now, we'll be done in 15, okay? We'll be done in 15. So last week's discussion question, fantastic efforts. Again, I deliberately do not dive into those. I do not provide commentary on those. I want that to be your conversation. Y'all have to listen to me over and over, okay? So I deliberately don't dive in on that. I'm very impressed. Now I'm gonna tell you what impressed me. Number one, the range of people selected. Awesome. Everybody from family members to sports, professional sports teams, to healthcare workers, politicians, people from St. Norbert College, professors. This is when you read through all of that and you see who people are picking, one of the realizations I hope you have is that leaders come in all shapes. They don't have to have a title. They don't have to be formally acknowledged even as a leader. It's the behaviors, it's what they do for us that allows us to see them as leaders, okay? So people, all kinds, of all ages, they're all around us, right? So that's one thing. Second, some of you did a fantastic job of, in your writing, linking stuff to the class material. This helps you learn the material, right? Not only helps you learn the material because you've got to try and make those connections, but also helps your classmates better learn the material because now you've got a real example and then you're saying, this relates to the trait theory or this relates to path goal theory or whatever it relates to. So please continue to do that in your responses. Link things to class material as much as possible. Your examples are what bring this stuff alive. I can give you all kinds of examples. That's nice. People want to hear yours as well. Also, it became very clear reading through your responses just how important leadership is. Now, let me emphasize here. I didn't say leaders, I said leadership. Leadership is a relationship. So we're talking about what these people are doing and also how that's affecting us, right? How it's affecting us as followers. For example, many of you talked about how people were basically helping us to manage our uncertainty, right? That is the number one feeling that people are having these days. Uncertainty. And of course, the reality is nobody knows with 100% certainty when we're going to be done with all of this, how we're going to be done with all of this. Nobody can know this. Nobody ever knows this. Just normally we're not obsessed about it as we might be right now. But there's a lot of uncertainty. So what does good leadership do? Good leadership helps people to manage that uncertainty. Reassures people that even though, it might be a while before we can step back into what we consider our normal lives, we're going to be okay. We are. As hard as this is, we are up to the challenge. Online learning, for example, is not easy. It's not easy, especially when you have multiple classes, different platforms, different expectations. It's a lot to juggle, right? You basically, for as many classes as you have, that's how many bosses you have. And they're all coming at you with different demands, different timelines, different expectations, right? Well, guess what? This is life. So you're developing even more skills than you had been developing while sitting in the classroom. So good leadership helps us to see that even when we are challenged, when we're out of our comfort zone, there's something about us that will enable us to be successful regardless. For some of us, it will be more of a challenge, no question. But think about how we come out of all this. And I want to do a tangential thing just briefly, okay? So I have 3 granddaughters. I've shared this with you. 2 of them are in school, the 7-year-old and the nearly 5-year-old. The nearly 5-year-old is in 4K, okay? The 7-year-old is in 2nd grade. And there are lots of questions like, now that they're at home learning, just try to imagine being 7 and doing what you're doing, trying to do online learning. As much as this sucks, think about it from the perspective of a 7-year-old. You remember being 7? 7-year-olds, as important as your friends are to you all right now, to 7-year-old, they're everything, right? And now they can't be around them. And you've got moms and dads and other people who are trying to make sure that these kiddos are learning while also trying to make sure that dinner gets on the table and, people don't completely lose their minds. Some people have viewed what we're living through as a problem, as bad. And there are lots of negatives, right? In terms of the economy and so on. But think also about the positives. The fact that some of you are having more time with your family than you ever have with your family, right? And having to negotiate those boundaries with people. Having to give yourself structure. Now we're only in week 3, so you might not yet feel successful at this. You might be like, I still can't quite get this online stuff down. You'll get better, right? You'll start to give yourself more structure. Think about those skills. Well, to relate this back to leadership in crisis, those leaders help us to see that the end will still be positive. That even though life will never be the same, and I'm going to tell you that right now as a person who studies disasters, we are never going back to what was before all this. That is gone. Our lives will never be the same. And that's okay. Because you will all have more skills than you had before March. Let's see, we started on break on the 13th, the 14th. Yeah, you have more skills now than you had them. I'll tell you that right now. And those skills will continue to develop. So leadership in a crisis helps us to see that potential within ourselves, helps to unleash that potential which is in ourselves, helps us to mobilize that potential that is within ourselves. And you all wrote about this. You did a great job talking about, someone's asking a question. In what ways do I think life will change after this crisis is over? That's a great question. I have my thoughts on that. Before I share those, though, I want to invite you to write down your thoughts. How do you think life will change after this is over? Just your quick thoughts. Put it in the chat. Hard question? Claire's sharing how we operate as a country in terms of healthcare benefits. Sam saying people will appreciate the little things more. Let's hear from more of you. Annika, millennials spending more time with their kids. Lauren, this could happen again. Of course it could. Absolutely. One hopes we would be better prepared. Joe, I'm hoping people will be more prepared. Yeah, same. More strict, Dave, more strict capacities in public places. Oh, maybe more people will be more careful maybe about how we engage with others in large public places. People will view different types of work as being more valuable. That'll be good, right? People more inclined to value personal relationships without technology. Wow, y'all are brilliant. More conscious about their relationships with people. Healthcare reforms. It'll be interesting to see what sticks. That we can't completely rely on international trade. Absolutely. Lots of great thoughts here. Online school maybe seems more desirable and affordable. Maybe. Everything's got trade-offs, right? People more careful, appreciating the intangibles. I love these answers. Keep throwing those out there. While you're doing that, I'll share what I think based upon, again, my research. Some of the good feelings that we imagine in terms of us being focused on relationships and so on, some of that will be true. There will be some substantive, long-term, sustainable changes like that. But it won't last. It won't last. People right now are thinking in terms of generosity, and some of that will continue, and some of the stuff about being closer to family, that will continue. And then there will be sort of more focus again on tech and all the other things that we find worth pursuing. So here's what I would say in terms of what will change. I think that this crisis is exposing all of the things that don't work in our society and that are unsustainable. Example one, having healthcare linked to employment, insurance linked to employment. That is an unsustainable model. That's been known for a long time, but this crisis is really highlighting that. And that only came into being around the Great Depression. That wasn't always the case. And we're past due for rethinking that. Second, we have enormous inequality in our society, enormous inequality. We have people whose lives will be destroyed by this, and other people who will come out better. They will be wealthier. They will be happier. This is exposing the differences in privilege. I'm living in a 2-story house where I have a whole floor to myself during the day if I want, and so does my husband, and so does my son. I have friends living in apartments that are 400 square feet, 20 by 20, with 2 adults and 2 small children. That's not the same kind of life, right? So hopefully, one of the things that happens politically is that we begin attending to those inequalities. Third, schools are the most important institution we have in our society. They provide not only an educational environment, now when I'm talking about schools, I'm saying PK all the way through college. They provide not only an educational environment, but I want you to think about yourself. They provide a place where people get fed. There are school children who do not have access to good nutrition because the schools are closed. There are some of you who do not have access to the same kind of nutrition you had at SNC for whatever reason. They are places where people's relational lives are nurtured, the social aspects of what it means to be a human being, of having friends, of having people we look up to. Schools serve that purpose. So it's not just about how well you can do on a standardized test or any test. I hope that people remember that when we come out of all this. Schools are the most important institution. Also, that I think another thing that will change is a point that somebody else brought up in terms of international trade. The push for globalization without borders, I think that we are now going to be looking at a major shift in that thinking. Not a complete pullback from that, but at least some attempts to try and decouple some of the interdependencies that we have. Because we're so interdependent that a virus can make its way around the globe in less than a month's time. That's pretty scary, right? Now imagine if someone had deliberately decided to do that. Which that's not what this is, but just imagine. Talk about a biological terrorist threat. Are you with me? So I think that we'll see those kinds of changes. And of course, some of the things that you listed, you're brilliant, people. You're brilliant. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. By the way, the recording also captures what we write in these messages, so you can go back and look at this stuff. Okay. Chapter 5. Here's your preview. Are you ready? Motivation, that which makes us tick, is really complicated. That's your preview. I'm not going to tell you anymore. That's it. That's your preview for chapter 5 and chapter 6, actually. So you'll just have to wait and start reading that material and then listen and watch the narrated PowerPoints. Okay. Exam 1. So number 9 on our agenda. Are these agendas helpful to you to see what we're going to be covering in class? Yeah, that I sent to you via email? Okay, good. So the exam. Are you excited? Are you excited? Let's see the excitement. Come on, people. Come on. Okay. This is one of the things that I have changed for our online. Normally, I have a mix of multiple choice and short answer. And I have 2 exams. And now I have 3 exams because instead of having 3 chapters on each exam, I have 2. Okay, so it's the same amount being assessed. I'm just doing it a little bit differently, actually, to make your lives easier. So you just have to focus on 2 chapters at a time. There will be 5 short answer questions. They're going to be on Moodle. You will type in your response there. To be clear, you can actually type your response someplace else and copy and paste it into Moodle if you prefer. Okay? It will not be a timed exam. So you could spend as little or as much time on it as you want. Does that make sense? You'll be able to go and look at the exam, see what the questions are, exit, think about them. No problem. Okay, so Annika's asking a question that I'll get to. Anyway. So you'll be able to go in, look at the questions, come back, answer the questions, etc. You will have to incorporate material from the narrated PowerPoints and the text in order to nail your responses, in order for those responses to be 100%. Are you with me? These are not just going to be opinion questions. What do you think about? Although you will have the opportunity to include your opinion. But you also have to show me that you understand the material. Another thing, it's okay for you to talk to each other about these questions. No problem. You can talk to other people about these questions. No problem. When you write, though, the writing has to be yours and just yours. Are you with me? So totally cool for you to talk to other people. No problem. Not me, though. You can't talk to me about the questions because I can't give any of you more of an advantage than anybody else, okay? So you can talk amongst yourselves, no issues. So Annika asked the question, when is the exam going to be out there? My plan is that the exam will be out on Moodle today, okay? You have until next Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. to finish it. You do not need, you do not need 96 hours to write this exam. Holy mother of horribleness that would be, okay? You can imagine if you were sitting in class, you had an hour and a half. And some people would finish early and some people would take all the time. So it should not take you more than 90 minutes. If it does, you're probably putting way too much into it. Does that make sense? Okay. The narrated PowerPoints, what I said, those would be available by Monday at the latest. To go to, and that's the latest. They could very well be out there before then. I will send you an email when the exam is on Moodle, so you don't have to keep checking. Is it there now? Is it there now? I'll send you an email. It's there now. Okay, so no worries there. Likewise, I'll drop you a line when the narrated PowerPoints are out there. Now, somebody had asked whether the text chapters would be there. Yes, the text chapters will be there for 5, 6, 9, and 11 because some people had trouble getting the book. So they'll all be out there for you. The narrated PowerPoints aren't there now because I haven't done them yet. You'll see me wearing this in at least one of them because I'm gonna work on it today, okay? Questions, what questions do you have? Anything else? Topic infographic due tonight. Discussion question, if you haven't already responded, it's super easy for this week, intentionally so. Please do that and then respond to another person. Am I looking for direct quotes? Great question. Do I want direct quotes from the text? It is not necessary that you provide direct quotes. You can if you want, depending on your writing style, okay? You can paraphrase, perfectly okay. Any other questions? Anything else? Easy peasy? Once you see the exam, you can ask me questions about process, etc. What I can't do is look at your draft answer and tell you if you're on track. Everybody with me? And if somebody asks a question that I think, gosh, probably everyone would like to know the answer, I'll send an email with the answer to the question for everybody. Okay? Well, I'll tell you what, folks, if you don't have any more questions right now, I'm going to set you free. I didn't hit 15 minutes. Sorry, it was 20. But I hope the rest of your day is awesome. And again, if you need me, you know how to get a hold of me, okay? Hang in there. See you later. Peace out. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Have a good rest of your day, folks. Take care.